Hi, thank you for tuning into this presentation on starting family history research. I'm Jamie Middendorf. I'm the Genealogy and Local History Librarian at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library. We're going to talk about getting started with genealogy research. The strategies and tips included in this discussion will be the most beneficial to people who are at the very beginning stages of researching their family trees or folks who just need a refresher on these first steps. Before we discuss the how of family history research, I like to talk about the why. There are many unique reasons why people get interested in researching their family trees, and oftentimes there's more than one reason why people do it. Sometimes a person's reason for researching family history might change over time. For example, if they started researching because they just really love history, but after their grandkids were born, they wanted to be able to pass on the family stories to them. In my line of work, I talk to people who love genealogy research for many reasons, including some of the following. It's a way to honor the past and spend time in the memory of our relatives who might have passed on. It's done out of a curiosity or of a search for self. It's done out of a sense of responsibility to give the family history to the next generation. It's done for fun, for the thrill of the hunt, for the immersion into history and the puzzle of how your family fits in, and it's done for achievement. The why we research is important to think about because it will help direct your research and frame the things you'd like to learn about your ancestors. I encourage you to take a minute to think about why you want to research your ancestors. Another important thing to keep in mind when you begin your genealogy research is that all family history research is different. That's because our ancestors led very unique and complex lives. They might have moved around a lot and were involved in life events that created many different types of documents that you'll find as you go along with your research. Perhaps in your research you'll find that one branch of your family tree is well documented with church records, newspaper articles, and maybe even a criminal record. But for another branch of your family tree, you might find land records and a photograph of the family. Keep in mind that as researchers, we are all unique. Some of us might be more interested in a specific time or event in history, and some of us might take a more creative approach to documenting our ancestors' lives by creating scrapbooks, family history videos, and more. As such, our genealogy projects will be different. Now, I want to take a minute to debunk some genealogy myths. Sometimes people will get caught up on one of these thoughts and let it affect their genealogy research, or not get started with their family trees at all. When people tell me that their ancestors were boring or that no one in their family did anything noteworthy, it seriously breaks my heart. Your ancestors made tough decisions and they celebrated happy times. Their lives are important. Think about how difficult it must have been for your immigrant ancestor to make the decision to say goodbye to their friends and family and come to the United States. Or how our ancestors felt when the Great War ended. Or what life was like working in Chicago's Union stockyards. Another myth is that a name has always had the same spelling. For a long time, spelling wasn't standardized. Perhaps your ancestor always spelled it the same way during their lifetime, but the people recording the name didn't spell it that way. It's always worth jotting down any spelling variations you come across. For the third myth, I can assure you that genealogy is never finished. Some folks aren't the only researcher in their family tree, and if that's the case, I urge you to work together or to use their research to jumpstart yours. You might find something that they missed or realize that they had the wrong information recorded. Your attention and work will give their research a fresh perspective. New record collections are frequently being added to genealogy websites, historical societies, and libraries. It's always worth a look. While more and more records are being added to online collections every day, it's not all online. And as you get deeper into your family history research, you'll find that you need to go to the places where your ancestors might have lived and where their records are kept. The important thing to take away from these first few slides is that you will be the most successful if you research with an open mind, if you try your best not to make assumptions about your ancestors, and remember the reasons why this is enjoyable to you. All right, so now we're getting into the steps of genealogy research. I bet you all know a lot about your family, even if you think you don't. Write down what you know about your family members. Record locations, relationships, and any birth, marriage, and death dates that you know. And don't overlook yourself in your family history research. There's important information about you that the next generation would love to know. One of my favorite things about family history research is learning who my ancestors really were. In this step, consider documenting your own life. What are your favorite childhood memories? What was the moment that you looked at your spouse and decided, yep, that's the one for me? Look around your home to see what kind of documents or family heirlooms you have. Perhaps you have an old photo album tucked away. Home videos are a wonderful treasure. Think about any important and unique documents, such as report cards, birth certificates, adoption paperwork, property records, and others. Pay careful attention to the things that you've inherited that might speak of your ancestors' hobbies. Do you still have the baby quilt that your great aunt made for you, or your dad's comic book collection? Some of my favorite family history objects to collect are recipe cards and sewing patterns. The objects that you've inherited held an important place in your ancestors' lives, and they tell a story about who your ancestors were and oftentimes what made them happy. Document your family memories in a way that you prefer. I like to either write down a quick narrative or start assembling my information into a timeline. Step 2 is similar to step 1, but with this step you'll be analyzing what your family members and family friends know about your family. Many family historians do research alone. However, it's important to connect with your family members. They might be able to tell you family stories that you either don't remember or would never know. When you ask your family genealogy questions, also ask them if they have any objects that have been passed down. Your great aunt might have inherited the family Bible or have a picture you've never seen of your great grandma. Consider asking your family members to record an oral interview with you. This is especially important for capturing the stories and the voices of older generations. If your family lived in the same neighborhood for ages, those neighbors might have celebrated life achievements and summer parties with your family members. By talking to a longtime neighbor or a close family friend, you might learn something about a different side of your relative's personality or might discover pictures from a block party in 1977. Community groups often publish their own histories. If your ancestors or relatives were regular members of a church, a club, or other organization, see if they have a mention of your ancestor in their written histories or archives. You might also find mentions of your ancestors in a town history. At the Arlington Heights Memorial Library, we have lots of town histories for the northwest suburbs in our Shackley Genealogy and Local History Room. Search our catalog at www.ahml.info or send me an email to see if we have the town history that you're interested in. Once we've analyzed what we have, we're going to develop a research goal. If you want to successfully answer a focused question, this is an essential step. Many family historians, myself included, will sometimes neglect this step, and that's okay. It's definitely fun to plug names into Ancestry or Family Search and see what comes up. However, if you want to answer a specific question about your ancestors, please include this step. Smaller scale, achievable goals are best, especially when you're just getting started with your research. I always have a million questions about who my ancestors were and what their lives were like. When I need to focus, I grab a pen and a pad of paper and make a list of all the questions I have about a specific ancestor. This helps me to visualize my thoughts and focus in on which questions to answer and in what order. You'll want to work towards questions that have a concrete answer. For example, according to this 1910 census record, Grandma was born in Italy in 1902. Where in Italy was she born? Will be easier to answer with documented proof than a more subjective question like, what was the real reason Grandma immigrated to the United States? When developing your research goal, think about what you want to do with your research now and in the future. For example, right now you might have the goal of discovering great-grandpa's immigration story, but down the road you'd like to write up this history to share at a family reunion. The down the road part of the goal might encourage you to be more creative with your family research than if the research was just for you. Maybe you go the extra mile to find a picture of the ship he sailed on to share at your family reunion. The work that we've done in step 1, analyzing what we already know, is critical because we need to move from the known to the unknown. Starting with what's known, which is you and usually your parents, will build your research to the point where you have enough information about the previous generation to start digging into their lives. With your research question in mind, you're going to think critically about which documents might help you in your search. For example, let's say you have happy childhood memories of going to Great Uncle Sal's house in Arlington Heights in the 1940s every Thanksgiving, and you can't remember where in Arlington Heights that house is, but you'd like to find out. What tools would you use? Finding Great Uncle Sal in the 1940 census would give you an address, but a city directory collection might show you that Great Uncle Sal moved to another house in Arlington Heights in 1941 and lived there throughout the rest of the 40s. In this case, Great Uncle Sal's birth certificate or the census records before 1940 wouldn't be of much value in answering your research question. When you're thinking of the records that might answer your research question, use time and place as a guide. What records were being created in the place at that time? In regards to place, my strategy is to think small and then go big. For example, what records can I find for my person in Arlington Heights, then Cook County, then Illinois? The Big Four in family history means the four largest and best known genealogy databases. These are Ancestry, Family Search, Find My Past, and MyHeritage. Family Search is a free genealogy website that anyone can open an account to use. Ancestry, Find My Past, and MyHeritage are databases that the Arlington Heights Memorial Library subscribes to. MyHeritage can be used at home with your Arlington Heights Memorial Library account, while Find My Past and Ancestry need to be used at the library building. Newspaper research is one of my favorite parts of genealogy. You might find articles on your ancestor that give hints to who they really were and what they enjoyed. For example, I have an article that included a photo about one of my great-great-aunts who was singing in a performance in town. Before I found that article, I didn't know she liked to sing. I've found photos of my ancestors for their engagements and anniversaries, and I've broken genealogy brick walls by finding obituaries that mention the small towns in Europe where my ancestors were born. With your Arlington Heights Memorial Library card, you can access newspapers.com and Access Newspaper Archive. While the coverage is different, both of these databases have strong nationwide collections of newspapers. Our library also has access to the Chicago Tribune. All of these newspaper databases can be accessed at home with your Arlington Heights Memorial Library account, or without a library card at our building. The Family Search Research Wiki is my go-to resource whenever I'm about to research a new topic or place I haven't researched before. Sometimes I go to it when I'm feeling stuck on a question. The Research Wiki is a collection of information on a topic. So you might find historical information on the place you're researching, like if there are records lost due to a courthouse fire or the year vital records began to be kept. You might find links to record collections, and you might find guides for doing successful research in other countries or reading old handwriting. As your research moves along, you will collect a large amount of documents. The earlier in your family history research that you create your organizational guidelines, the better off you'll be. The key is to find a way that works for you and to do it consistently. You'll need to decide how you want to keep your family history research. Do you want to go paperless and store everything digitally, or do you prefer to keep information in binders or on the computer? If you're researching multiple families, you'll need to decide a file name system that will keep documents for each family organized. For example, you might create a digital file folder for each surname that you're researching, and within that surname file, have a file folder for each of the heads of households. When saving a document, my naming system looks like this. I'll first use the surname, then the first name, an underscore, the name of the document, and the year that document was created. You can see an example of this on the slide. For example, Gomez being the last name, Theodore being the first name, an underscore, census being the name of the document, and 1910 being the year of creation. And again with Gomez, Theodore, underscore, obituary, 1956. Not only do I keep my family history files on the computer, but I also print out records and keep them in color-coded binders by surname. Backing up your genealogy research is critical. It's a terrible day if your computer crashes and you lose years of research. There are many different platforms and services that will help you back up your documents. Choose the best one for you. Now, this is usually the part of family history research that makes people groan, but good genealogists are citing their research as they go. Clear and correct citations give your research weight and credibility. Citations will not only help you look back at your research and remember the different sources you checked to get to your conclusions, but they'll also help another person if you choose to share your research. Evidence Explained, Citing History Sources from Artifacts to Cyberspace by Elizabeth Schoen Mills is the book on genealogy citations. We have it at our library available to check out. Another noteworthy resource is the St. Louis Genealogical Society's online citation guide that's based on Evidence Explained. It's clear, easy to use, and one of my go-to resources. There are several different genealogical software options available to family historians. These can help you organize your information, visualize your family trees, print projects, and more. As you continue with your family history research, be sure to get involved with your genealogy community. Our library often has several genealogy programs happening every month, from our very open and informal genealogy discussion to lectures from experts in their specialty. There are plenty of online learning resources like webinars and recorded lectures available to people interested in family history research. Family Search has a strong collection of archived webinars, and Roots Tech makes available some of their recorded lectures. Blogs like Eastman's online genealogy newsletter and The Legal Genealogist are educational and interesting. There's also various podcasts dedicated to genealogy. Local and specialty groups are always planning events and looking for new members. In our area, you'll find groups like the Northwest Suburban Genealogy Society, the Illinois State Genealogical Society, the Jewish Genealogical Society of Illinois, CAGNY, which stands for the Computer Assisted Genealogy Group of Northern Illinois, and the Polish Genealogical Society of America. Many genealogy groups have special member benefits like archived webinars and informative newsletters to help you make the best of your research. Before you dive into researching your roots, I'd like to share some general research tips with you that can be applied to most genealogical research databases and methods of research. One of my all-time favorite genealogy strategies is to make a timeline. Not only will a timeline help you visualize the gaps in your research, but it also helps tell a story. I use mine as a sort of table of contents in the front of my genealogy binders. Experiment with your search terms and the amount of information you include in your search. For example, if you've been using Ancestry to search and filling out as many of the search fields as you can, experiment by leaving some information off the form. I often use this technique when I'm having trouble finding a family in a census record. I might search instead for the first name of the husband, his birth year, the location, and the first names of his wife and children, but leave off the surname. Or if you've been searching with a birth year, try searching with a date range for a year of birth instead. Sometimes less is more. And don't forget about the fan club, the friends, associates, and neighbors. As you start researching further back into your family tree, you might hit a brick wall on one of your ancestors. A technique to possibly get around that wall is to take a side step with your research and see what you can find out about a relative of theirs. For example, I could trace my line back to one of my great-great-grandmothers, and then I hit a total brick wall that left me stumped for years. Using her obituary, I was able to discover that she had one brother living in the same town she was buried in. That brother had a very common name, but for years I researched him, tracked down his siblings, and documented the evolution of their name change from Jorgensen to Johnson. Going backwards into this family's past helped me find the records I needed to connect this family with my great-great-grandma. And remember that new record collections are frequently being added to databases. Check back often. And if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. I'm happy to help, and I'd love to hear from you or see you at our library. Thank you for watching.